Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad we're the same height. I don't have to play with this. Well, I don't really have to give much of a background. Thank you. You've given it already. But in short, Africa Route Clearance Consultants, my primary business, is a specialized civil engineering firm in the industry of abnormal load transportation. And one of the requirements in abnormal load transportation is the verification of gross vehicle mass. And I'm specifically talking to abnormal load vehicles over 100-ton gross vehicle mass. Historically, very similar to what we're seeing now with IMO Solas, it's always been a requirement to specify the payload and the gross combination mass, which has been done, and it's been done based on a paperwork, more of a theoretical exercise, and there's not been any proof, so to speak, as to the actual weights. So therefore, Department of Transport, as one of their concerns, was, of course, it's related again to the permitting itself and the cost of permitting, depending on the weights. So therefore, we were discussing, well, how can we weigh these? We do weigh them on I think, Owen, a less advanced version of what you have today, being more advanced than what we had, and that was typically a portable weighmat system. But of course, we're weighing behemoths with 200 wheels, etc., and that process could take 8 to 10 hours. So at significant cost of 10 to 12,000 rand per combination. So what we've done is through Transnet Port Terminals, I've had some headaches, with due respect to my colleague on my left, but I'm very pleased to say that Transnet Port Terminals in Richards Bay have given us the go-ahead for the first abnormal load weighbridge installation which we're putting there. Richards Bay predominantly is where most abnormal loads come out, certainly the higher ones. There's obviously a lot of abnormal loads come out of Durban, but there are height restrictions out of Durban. So as a result of that, any of our massive loads, our super loads as we call them, come out of Richards Bay, and we had weigh slots there where we would install our portable mats. We're now upgrading that facility to a full-size abnormal load weigh-in-motion weigh scale. Which, as you rightly say, has to be certified, and it can only be certified once it's inspected by the MECs, etc. But the construction is due to commence next week, and construction period is 9 weeks. So it's not a particularly difficult installation to put in. It's not stupidly expensive, and what we like about it is we'll be processing a massive abnormal load in about 10 minutes. The advantage here is that it's a weigh-in-motion technology, and our tolerances are down now to 2% as compared to a static weighbridge. The advantage of that obviously is volumes, from a volume perspective. Now this technology is not that new. Micros Traffic Monitoring specialize in it. Every time you curse and smile at those cameras on the N3 that average speed prosecute you, your car has been weighed, not only had its number plate taken and it's real time, it's read on a TV screen in Pietermaritzburg, so you can actually wave at the chaps. But they know everything. So this technology is in the road. Every time you go under one of those cameras, there is already a weighbridge under that camera for your car, and it's quite amazing what we do see, and it does go to the Road Traffic Inspectorate. We see typical HGV vehicles, 58 tons, 63 tons, bombing along at 110 k's an hour. so the technology to do this, and this is at speed, is no problem at all. So this brings me to the question, and the reason that I'm here is that our weighbridge is the answer. Well, it's a bit of a biased question for me. But so I will, along with Owen, I will say yes, I think they are. But again, because I think there are problems. Not everyone can afford a weighbridge. There aren't enough of them around, and we have other issues. A weighbridge can't necessarily determine container weights. If we have two 20-foot containers on a superlink, we have the gross vehicle mass. We can take the tear weight off that, but we don't necessarily know which of the. Even if it's within its tolerances, we don't know which container is weighing 25 tons and the other one's 15, or are they both 19 tons or 20? So that's a problem. But yes, it's from a 40-foot container side, no problem whatsoever. To drive, literally, it's almost an instantaneous exercise to collect the ticket and transport the ticket at the other side. In fact, I don't know if you know how, if you take the Heidelberg weighbridge, for example, we do have the massive static weighbridges on the side. Those are generally used. Those are used for vehicles that are not compliant. There's a green and a red light system. They drive through what is the slow lane, low-speed way in motion. They go through the slow lane and they get a green light because they're compliant and their gross vehicle mass is under, they may continue. The ones that are pulled over have a red light because they're overweight. Then they are weighed statically. This is an important thing as well. Static weighing, in accordance with our legislation, is the only means by which prosecution is allowed. So weigh in motion, that's why we have weigh in motion, and then if we find a problem with the vehicle, we have to send them to an RTI station, and that's dealt with by RTI as an offence that they've committed. So what we're looking at here, and certainly from the abnormal load side, is we're looking at the weigh in motion because it can, and the Department of Transport are willing to give a window. We're looking at weigh in motion because we're looking at the transporters self-regulating, much like the RTMS system operates. Because if we can get the transporters to self-regulate, it's not in anyone's interest to be stopped before the port because they're overweight or not get their IMO Solas certificate, consignee, consignor, or their AV certificate for that matter. So as a result of that, with abnormal loads, we've allowed a window of offences somewhat similar to RTMS, where we've got a little black book, and if you appear in it 3 times, then we're not going to be issuing you with more permits. I agree with an international regulation that's not necessarily in our hands to offer, but I have been reading through some articles, and there's one that suggests, and personally I'm not sure if this is worth exploring down the line, but should a pilot scheme be set up by carrier, shippers, port competent authorities, test the system? And the response is it's recognized there may be valuable lessons from such an effort, but it is a matter to be discussed among the affected parties. This is at a national and commercial level. So I think that's something that's worth noting, because I think we will have some pilot schemes. Even what we have, our abnormal load weighbridges are capable of weighing anything up to 7.5 meters wide. But that doesn't mean we can't weigh a normal 3 meter wide HGV. So the application can be used. We are scattering our weighbridges throughout South Africa. Because we have 9 countries in South Africa, with each province, basically speaking, issuing its own AV permit and wanting its own weighbridge certificate. We're trying to standardize that and say, if we have one weighbridge certificate, surely that's enough. But we've seen situations where axles disappear and weights change, etc. So certainly at border posts, and also at provincial heads, Gauteng being one of them. So I think the more of these scattered around, there's no reason why those applications can't be, in our view, opened up as a private facility for people who would like either consignee, consignor certificate, or whether they'd like an IMO Solas certificate, or whether they'd like an AV weighbridge certificate. So our business model is a private weighbridge facility, more of a public-private partnership, working with Department of Transport, Transnet, and CSIR. Interestingly, there is Paul Nodengen of the CSIR came up with a formula, and he's proven that there is a 100% increase in profit on a 10% overload. So actually there's an incentive to overload, which people tend to go for. Now, and I think what's important here is we shouldn't look at weighbridges as being a policing element. I think we should look at weighbridges being a regulatory element that encourages good practice. Good practice, short-term profit is often is outweighed from a safety factor as to the performance of the vehicle, the longevity of the vehicle, and of course the safety of other road users. This applies to abnormal loads, it applies to HGVs, we can look at the statistics of accidents on our most traffic road, the N3, and inevitably there's overloading is half the problem, and that's where our insurance companies come into play, because insurance companies are not going to hold their insurance on anything that's classified as overloaded. So that's pretty much a bit of the background. Do I have the answers? Not really. I'm here on the panel. I'm happy to answer some questions from what I know. No, I'm not the expert on it at all. But my very small field that I play in abnormal loads I'm just seeing is remarkably similar to the situation we find ourselves in with IMO Solas, and a weighbridge is a weighbridge. I don't believe that the weighbridge is the only answer. No, not at all. And there are certain things, as it states in here, if we've got an entire consignment of Samsung LED TVs, well, there's no point in weighing. We can work that out quite simply and stick them in the container. We know what the container weighs. And again, I think there's many applications. I like the private application from Owen's perspective, but then again, that's going to be up to a business to see whether or not it can cost that in, and that's an affordable option to have one's own weighbridge capability at their depot, certainly possibly for the larger ones, but maybe not for the smaller ones. So therefore, like abnormal loads, we're wondering whether or not we can't look at public facilities strategically placed throughout the country that are open to anybody to avail themselves of, and that would be in our model to recoup our money. So there's one thing I did just want to mention, there's the Richards Bay facility, which is going to be the pilot project at first. But in parallel with that, we have a massive facility on the cards on a tender at the moment, which is currently in discussion between the CDC at Kuka and Transnet, for a very large facility similar to the likes of Heidelberg, going in on Neptune Road at the port of Nuga. So that's the tender is not out. Well, I say not out, not awarded at this stage of the game, but it's in final negotiations. Now that would provide a complete system for anything that's needed going into that port. The key, however, is again on the weighbridge. I think the positioning of the weighbridges is critical, because there has to be a lead time for the supply of the IMO Solas verification to the port and for the stowmaster.